Okay, now I'm going to talk about the materials and equipment that I use to dye yarn. The first thing you need to do is buy some dye. As stated, I buy from the ProChem site online. It comes in these little jars. I don't know how much they hold, 2 ounces. Some of them are wide and short, but they're all 2 ounces. And as you can see, I couldn't figure out what to buy, and it seems like I got some of everything, but I don't really, because they make a lot of colors. But you need to keep them in a plastic container out of the way of other people. And I got my little note there. Don't measure less than 1 gram. That note's there because I probably learned the hard way on that. Okay, you're going to need a scale to do dyeing. This is a scale that you can get on Amazon for $13. And I have the information in the handout. It's called SmartWeigh. And this one is an older model. It just weighs up to 600 grams. The newer ones do 1,000 grams. But one brand new skein of yarn is just 100 grams. So this is plenty for my purposes. So it's digital. It's got a readout on there. You can tar it to get the weight zeroed out of whatever you put on there. And of course, it does it in grams or ounces. I'm sticking with grams on this. So you will use this to weigh your yarn when you're making skeins to dye, and you will use it to measure the dye powder, the grams of dye powder. It is accurate. I have put a weight on there to see how close it came to the weight of the item that I put on there that was certified a certain weight, and it was very close, maybe within 1/10 of a gram. So it's plenty accurate for our purposes. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you the space that I use to work in and the equipment I use to mix the dye for dyeing. So I'm in my house, but I'm in a sunroom, and right now it's closed off to the living space, but in the wintertime it is not, and I do dye in the wintertime, so it's working indoors. You're going to need some boiling water to dissolve the dye. So I have an electric tea kettle, and I pour the boiling water into a container, and then I use a plastic syringe to measure the right amount. This is my dye mixing station. It's just a plastic bin that I spray with water, and I put a wet paper towel on the bottom to collect the dye powder. So this kind of contains the dye powder and keeps it from getting airborne. So I've got my rubber gloves out, ready to put on, my scale, the thing I'm going to mix the dye in, and then I'll add a jar that I'm going to pour that stock solution into. Then nearby I have a bowl that I throw my measuring spoon into, so I'm not getting that powder into the air. I wear, in addition to the rubber gloves, I wear an apron and I wear a respirator because I got my face right there in that dye powder and I don't want to inhale any of it. Then I've got my notes that I'm going to make to fill my little jars. So I've got some things mixed already, some 1% stock solutions. I have some 0.1% stock solutions, but I need to make some mixes. And so I'll do that later, show you that later. But I've got my jars all labeled, the lids as well as the jar itself, so you can not get confused, because there's so many numbers that look alike and you gotta really catch yourself. I already see a mistake here. I forgot to label the jars, which I'll do next. In addition, I've got all my yarn, little 10 gram skeins of yarn. They're all labeled, and I will fill this with some warm water with a little Synthropol and put those to soak next because they have to soak about 30 minutes so that the dye will transfer evenly. They need to be saturated. I have plastic syringes that I use to measure the stock solution into the dye baths. You can get them at the Orscheln Farm and Home or online. Sometimes you'll find that the plunger is difficult to push in. If that's the case, pull it out and put a little foaming soap or diluted soap on the rubber end, and that will make it slide easier. I have my jars here that I will set the little paper slips on so I know how much stock solution to add, and they're all ready to go. I just need to add salt and water. And then these are the pots that I will be using to put the jars in. I'll put 8 in here and 4 in here. That's in there.